Thank you. I am delighted to be here tonight, and I really want to thank our colleagues and our friends who have laid out, I think in some very thoughtful ways, how one can think about innovation and how it is much bigger than the word itself, right? I'm also, and I want to do this now because I know I'll forget later, I really want to call out Samantha and Tacey and the group, the advisory group. Thank you all so much for this. You took something that was a little bit of a germ of an idea and blew it into something bigger than anything, and how you have made it something that has both breadth and depth. So I thank you all so much for this, and looking forward to the impact it's going to have on the college. I always get a tickle to figure out what hairstyle they're going to put up next with me. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but one of the things that I was charged with, if I could, was to figure out how to bring the two speakers together and then do what DeRionne does. So I have some notes I'm going to go back and forth on here if you don't mind. But what I would say to you is I'm struggling with something, and I need some help from you all, and maybe in our discussion period we can have this, maybe in future conversations we can have. How do we make innovation a heart song at Montgomery College, within Montgomery County? When I say a heart song, it isn't something that is being done to you. It's not something that somebody else foists upon you. It's something that is from the belly of who we are. And we figure out in very intentional ways how that can transform our students' lives, how it can transform our community. I've been thinking a lot about that. Many of you know that we've been going through a few changes at Montgomery College, true? Just a few. Some have said too much, which I hear. Some have also been saying that, okay, what's next? And I'm like, we're going to pause for a second. We got a few things we got to figure out. But what I think is really important about that for me is that innovation in a very specific way is a type of change, right? And the literature tells us about change in a very simple thing. Change only occurs if there's a felt need. If there's a felt need, change could come. Now, I would argue with the literature. I think there's some other ways in which innovation/change occurs. And I'm going to suggest to you there are three ways in which, in my mind, that happens. And I think it is because in higher education, we're a little bit different than some other sectors. So if we think about innovation the way it's been defined traditionally, it's a new process, a new service, a new way of doing things. That's typically the most simple definition of innovation. I think, though, that word new and the way you think about it is actually what makes this very distinctive for higher education. Because in my mind, higher education was a movement before it was a set of buildings to be managed. It was a movement. The idea that we would help people have access to the middle class is a movement. It's not a set of buildings. It's not total risk management. It's not what's on the profit line. It's this idea that education has a noble goal and an intent to help someone transform their life and the life of their children and the life of their family and the life of their community. So it's bigger than that. So for me, I think a lot about the fact that, one, change is something that is important, but innovation is something that you have to see something new, right? That's the first one. You see something new in the innovation. So I like to tell you, in the way that I know how to do best to communicate, a couple stories, if you don't mind. The first one, Ronnie mentioned this. I happen to have been on his board at Impact Silver Spring. And in this opportunity, I had an experience that I was forced to see something new. And I want to share that with you because I think it speaks to some of the things that you're seeing happening within the organization, but then also the networks that Ronnie talked about. I was at a board meeting, and what was very commonplace to do every month or every time we had a board meeting, they bring in different people to have conversations with us. And in this particular session, there was a gentleman, an African immigrant. I'm going to guess, and I don't know, he's probably in his late 40s, early 50s. And he came in, and we're talking about the network, and he'd been one of the speakers, and he talked about his experience. and how powerful the network had been for him and what was happening there. And in the course of this conversation, he says, well, I'm taking correspondence classes. It's technical correspondence class. Now, between me and you, those of us who are in higher education, we get a little worried about correspondence classes, right? Because I'm thinking, I know for sure you wonder if this is accredited, and I'm also worried if you're getting any financial aid for it, right? And I know, based on the story he had told, that poverty is an issue, right? So I'm struggling with this. So I turned to him and I said, hey, have you thought about taking classes at Montgomery College? And he didn't know who I was. We were just sitting there, and he said, no. I said, why? He said, Montgomery College, it's just so far away. So we're sitting at the Tacoma Park, near the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. And I'm thinking he lives in an apartment complex, probably 3 miles next to the campus. So I had kind of had this based on the geography that he described. And I said, well, aren't you close to the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus? You could go there. And he said, no. He said, that's not what I mean. And in trying to translate, because you can see him translating his head, he said to me, DeRionne, Miss, it seems so far away. Words. It seems so far away. And I kind of paused. I said, well, what could make it closer for you? And he said to me, well, maybe if the college had a little office in my apartment complex and I got to get familiar with people and I could go and talk to them, if I could get comfortable filling out the forms and somebody spoke my language a little bit, then over time, I'd be able to go to the college. I will tell you I saw something new in that moment because we're Montgomery College. We've been around for 67 years. We have over 100,000 graduates who have attended it, more who've come and transferred on, and we've done a very good job of bringing people to us. But I started thinking, what about this student, potential student, who thought that we were too far away to come to us? Hence the genesis of our community engagement centers. This idea that if we take and create a presence with a community agency or entity that is already trusted in that community, because the assumption is that the college is trusted. Well, it's trusted if you actually come into us, right? But for so many people, we seem so far away. And this is the new face of this county. So our community engagement centers is this idea of actually intentionally moving into communities where we are underrepresented, and they are underrepresented in us, and we're building, dare I say, a network, and an intentionality about that. So my theory on this is that Carla and her team, they will work with these folks, and we've got folks all across the college who are going to be working in these centers, and then they can say, you're comfortable here, we can talk to you about going to college, you can get basic information and education, you can take computer technology classes, you can work on your GED, we can talk to you about financial aid, and at some point, we're going to hold your hand, and we're going to take you to the campus that's nearest to you, so that you can have the comprehensive access to the experiences and services that we have at Montgomery College. Seeing something new. That's what sparked an innovative moment for me. What I think is very powerful about that, though, is that it means we have to be so fully connected and aware of who our community is, that we're willing to step into those spaces and to figure out how we translate the college experience and Montgomery College for a population that may or may not understand who we are and how we do that work. I'd also like to think about this. I sit on a board, as you heard a couple of them, and one of them was with the president of a theological college here in Washington, D.C. And he talked about the fact that his church, the Theological Seminary, is working with churches. And in this, they're having very thoughtful conversations about how so many churches, much of their services are directed to the people who are actually already in the church, right? Although their mission would dictate others. So he said this, y'all, something new that blew my mind. He said, we're teaching them how to turn the church inside out. Whoa. Did y'all have a moment? Because I had a moment when he said it. Turning the church inside out. And I thought, isn't that the same thing with the college? We want to turn the college inside out. Because there's a huge portion of folks who are going to keep coming to us. But the reality at the end of the day is that we've got to figure out how to connect with those populations, those lists that Ronnie had up here earlier, who don't know us, are afraid to know us, don't know the opportunities are here, and that we have to translate our processes. I'm looking at Linda over here who does some work with a program at a high school here, and she said, have you all ever sat down and looked at your application and processed it from the point of someone who is undocumented, someone who may have attended multiple high schools, someone whose family may say this and may say that, all these different types of perspectives to think about access. How do you translate that experience? Innovation in my mind first starts with seeing something new. Sometimes also, secondly, innovation comes when you see something in a new way, right? Something that before you didn't even know it was there, but sometimes it's seeing something in a new way. You all know that we've created our ACES program, and this is a program that is targeted very specifically to young adults who are not represented well in higher education. And we're partnering with MCPS to put coaches in the high school. Instead of waiting for them to come to us, right? We're going into the high schools and coaching them along to get to the college. What I think is very interesting about this, we have about 300 of those students who are at Montgomery College this fall. Very exciting. I had the opportunity, I called Karen Callender, the director, and said, hey, I typically teach a class every fall. This fall, I'm not able to teach the class based on my schedule. I'd like to spend time regularly with a group of the ACES students. And she said, not a problem. I'll pick a group that are on this particular scholarship program. And she didn't tell me that at the time. She said, I just want you to, I'll pick some, and they'll be in your office Thursday at 2 o'clock, and you'll meet with them every few weeks. I said, not a problem. Got very excited, right? And these young folks come in, and I start off, and I start telling them my story about how ACES got to be invited. And I won't repeat it all, but many of you know that my story, and you've heard me talk about this, is very similar to most of the ACES students that we have. First in my family to go to college, grew up in poverty, trying to, in a lot of ways, change the trajectory of my family, and understood that translating higher education was something that was very problematic for me to figure out how to do to my family. So this is the same idea. So I tell them my story. Next thing you know, I said, tell me your stories. Lord have mercy, I had a moment, right? Because in my mind, conceptually, I know who our students are. Bob Lynch sends us out the profile of Montgomery College students every fall. I read them. I can talk about the fact that we have no majority race. I can talk about the fact that the majority of our students are first generation. I could talk about our yield rate from MCPS. I can talk about the fact that we have this number of graduates. But my God, seeing something new in a different way changed my life. I can count on my hand, and all of us who've been in the classroom, these 5 transcendent moments that you have, and if you're blessed, you have more than them. But I can put in my mind the top 5 moments I've ever had teaching or interacting with students. This is the top of that list because I simply invited them to tell their story. So I wrote down some of the things they described themselves as. One, they're having lots of pressure from family, from the community, from their family in other countries that they're helping to provide for. Yeah, no, I know this. Yeah, I said we know. But for me, I was seeing something in a new way because now I just wasn't looking at the statistic that's in our profile book, but I'm thinking of Alejandro when I talk about this, right? So I think about in this room of 15 young folks, there were 6 of them from Latin countries, many of them from war-torn countries who are struggling in ways that I never, 2 from African countries, and talking about that translation. So here they are. In this room, I had 2 single parents. I had 3 war refugees. I had a young woman who was emancipated out of the foster care system after she turned her mother in and was taken out of her own home for her own safety and grew up in the foster care system, is now emancipated. We talked about abusive and violent families. We talked about alcoholic parents. We talked about those who were dreamers. We talked about first generation and what that meant, like to explain to their parents a FAFSA form, right? Y'all know, you've heard me talk about my own story about that. Honor students in the room, let's be very clear. Many of them are in developmental education, but some who are in honors programs. Most of them are taking care of their families. This one young man, from his sophomore year in high school until this point, is working second shift. So he would go to high school during the day, leave, had a car, was obviously driving illegally, and went directly into his work at Walmart. Worked there, second shift, got off at 11, and then went home, tried to study, and got up the next day and did the same thing over again, seeing something in a new way. Living with grandparents, one described himself as a troublemaker. No mentors, honor students, athletes. Some had invested parents. Some were mentoring and raising their siblings. The community narrative is evolving. We want to be a part of that. We are a part of that in higher education. Third way that I think innovation occurs, you see something you never saw before or had the courage to see before, right? Something new, something in a new way, something you never saw before, had the courage to have. So, Leadership Montgomery, I can tell you now I'm going to go over. I apologize. Leadership Montgomery, I've been hearing from Esther Newman, oh, Warden Green wants to meet you. Warden Green wants to meet you. I said, no, everybody in the county want to meet me. I get it. Warden Green really wants to talk to you. So we go to the Leadership Montgomery. We're spending the day in the detention center. Go to the detention center. And he didn't even know I was going to show up that day because I actually said I wasn't going to be there, but went there. Warden Green, we do the tour. He's talking about what's happening there. And then he takes us into a room, not unlike this in terms of a detention center. And there were 4 young men sitting at north, south, east, and west in the room. And we all broke into groups of 4 to listen to their story. And we got to rotate every 15 minutes to hear another part of their story. Unsolicited, one person in every group always said, they tell their story, how they got there, what happened. At the end of every one, so what are your plans when you get out? Y'all know what they said? I'm going to Montgomery College. They didn't just say school, they called out Montgomery College. Unplanned, unsolicited, they know our questions, they know who we were. They didn't know who I was, nothing. I asked Gordon Green later, you didn't tell them, did you? And he said, no, I didn't do that. All of them said Montgomery College. So here's this epiphany I have, because, I got family who went to the penal system, and my own biases about how they got there, why they're there, and why they should probably still be there plays into that, right? Let's keep it real, right? So, but then I'm looking at these young men, and then Gordon Green, he always says, 2 million folks are in our incarceration system, and they're all going to get out within the next 10 years. 2 million, how do you want them back? Woo! Courage, right then, right? DeRionne, put around your own issues. Yeah, in theory, I know we serve folks who are in prison. In theory, I know we serve, how we want them back. So if you think about that, something I had to have courage to see. So now we have expanded our work into the correction system. We are doing pre-release center there, working with 1,400 folks who've completed a digital literacy program. We're doing the Bridges to Opportunities. We're looking at GED, advisement, placement. That required us courage to see something, because we was doing a couple little things, but the intrusiveness of that. So I'll end on this idea. And you can take it for what it is. I loved Dan's point about how we have to craft intentionality in this and how young people play, but this idea of kinder and braver. Those of you who know how Robert and I parent, have this gorgeous little boy, and only thing I ever want from him is to be a kind boy. Kind. I tell him all the time, I say, what kind of boy are you? In the morning we do a chant, what kind of boy are you? And he says it, I'm a kind boy, Mama. So the other day he came home and he had experience on the school bus, and some little boy is working his nerves, because that's how he talks. He talks like he's an adult sometimes. He said, oh, he's working my nerves, Mama. And I said, he said, but Mama, I didn't say nothing. I said, you did? I'm so happy. He said, because I'm a kind boy. But he was working my nerves. I'm a kind boy. So I thought, if there's a way as an institution, we turn ourselves inside out, we think about innovation in a way that extends beyond what we have immediate control over. If we do it in networks of people bigger and better and combine ourselves, you take your little bit, my little bit, and we put it together, we might get something really good. We do it with breadth and depth. We do it with kindness, courage, and bravery. Can y'all imagine how we can just blow up Montgomery County? That to me is exciting. So I'm excited. I went over, I apologize, but thank you all very much, and we'll have a conversation now.